You've been lied to all your life. They told you that some things are just stories, harmless, myths, superstitions. But what if I told you there's a book that shouldn't exist? A manuscript so cursed, so powerful, that some believe it wasn't written by human hands at all. A book born not from faith, but from a pact with the devil. Forget everything you think you know about forbidden knowledge, about ancient texts, about the line between good and evil. Because this isn't just paper, ink, and old leather. No, this is something else entirely. Something alive, watching, waiting, whispering. The church tried to hide it. Monarchs tried to control it. Wars tried to burn it. But nothing and no one could destroy it. And those who tried paid dearly. Some with their lives, others with something far worse. And if you think this is just a legend, let me ask you this. Why has everyone who's ever owned this book fallen? Why has every place that tried to protect it been cursed with fire, ruin, and death? This is not just a story. This is a warning, because what you're about to discover goes far beyond anything you were ever supposed to know. This is the untold truth about the Codex Gigas, a book written in a single night, a night that traded salvation for eternal damnation. And by the time this ends, you'll realize some books aren't meant to be read. The macabre pact with the devil. There was a silence, not the ordinary silence, but the suffocating one. The kind that presses against your skin, crawls into your ears, and refuses to let go. Deep inside the cold stone walls of a forgotten monastery, a man trembled, a monk, alone, condemned to face the unthinkable, a punishment so cruel, so merciless, that even death felt like mercy. Buried alive, bricked between walls, forgotten, erased. His crime no one remembers, but his desperation, that became eternal. And as the shadows grew longer, one thought started to poison his mind. What if salvation doesn't come from the light, but from the shadows? Imagine your heartbeat pounding in your ears, knowing each tick of the clock is one step closer to an agonizing death. The walls, ready to swallow you whole. Time, slipping like sand through your fingers. The monastery had given him one way out, one impossible way. Transcribe the entire Bible in a single night. A task so absurd, it was practically a death sentence. His hands trembled, his vision blurred, ink stained his fingers. He knew this was hopeless, and yet, somewhere in that terrifying silence, something began to stir, not from heaven. No, something from far, far below. His lips, dry, cracked, began to whisper the unthinkable. Words not meant for mortal tongues. A call, a summoning, a desperate plea thrown into the void. And the void answered. First, a shift in the air. Heavy, thick. The candles flickered, the shadows stretched, grew, twisted, and then a presence. Oh, the presence, suffocating, heavy. The smell of sulfur, of burnt earth, invaded his lungs, and those eyes, two bottomless pits, staring, consuming, owning him before a word was even spoken. No introduction, no negotiation, just a stare that said everything. I heard you. The pact was simple, brutal, his soul for a miracle, a manuscript, written, complete, before dawn. And not just any manuscript, one that would carry his name. Long after his flesh turned to dust, the monk nodded, trembling, shivering. After all, what is a soul when the alternative is an eternity of suffocating darkness, buried alive, forgotten, erased? The deal was struck, no way back. And as the ink touched the page, something strange happened. His fingers steady, his hand precise, his mind sharp. almost mechanical, almost. Not his own, line after line, word after word, scripture flowed, not like ink, but like blood from an open wound. The Bible, the Psalms, the Chronicles, and page after page after page, filled without pause, without error, as if time itself bent around him, or maybe he had stepped out of time. His hand never trembled, his eyes never blinked, his mind no longer questioned, but something else began to creep in, something that didn't belong, darker, older, as if the one guiding his hand was leaving traces. It wasn't just scripture anymore, no. The pages started to house something else. Spells, exorcisms, rituals, formulas, knowledge forbidden to man, words designed not to save, but to control, to bind, to summon, to bend the unseen to the will of the reader. Was this the monk's hand, or was he merely the vessel? A puppet with ink-stained strings, the lines between him and it blurred. The quill never slowed, the ink never dried, and the whispering, oh, the whispering, it never stopped. Then came the final page, the one that, to this day, sends shivers down every spine that dares look at it. It wasn't scripture, it wasn't prayer. It was just him, a full-page portrait, the devil himself, drawn with such precision, such detail, that it feels alive. Claws, horns, fangs, a forked tongue slithering from his mouth, and the eyes empty, yet all-seeing, as if they don't just watch you, but through you, straight into your thoughts, straight into your soul. And here's the question, why? Why risk everything, not just life, but eternity, for a book? Was it desperation? A fight for survival? Or was there something else? A hunger, a knowledge, a secret that perhaps only those on the edge of death could ever glimpse? Or maybe, just maybe, the monk knew something that most will never dare to accept, that the scariest prison isn't made of stone, it's made of time, of obscurity, of being erased from memory forever. As dawn approached, the air shifted again, lighter, less heavy. The shadows retreated, the suffocating presence gone, and on that cold stone table laid the impossible. A book, colossal, 620 pages, flawless, perfect, as if not written but manifested. The monk, hollow, his task complete, but his price eternal. His soul no longer his. Centuries would pass, empires would rise and fall, but this manuscript, this Codex Gigas, would remain, a relic of a pact that perhaps never truly ended, because those who've stood before it swear it feels alive, watching, waiting, whispering. And if you think that was the darkest secret hidden within these pages, oh, you're wrong, because deep in the very center of this cursed manuscript, there is something else. The Devil's Page, there it is, right in the heart of the Codex Gigas, a page unlike any other, a page that doesn't whisper, it screams in silence. No scripture, no holy text, no words of wisdom, just a portrait, but not of a saint, not of a prophet, no, a portrait of something far older, far darker, the devil, a figure so haunting, so grotesque, that even the bravest souls hesitate. His body fills the entire page. No borders, no escape, just him, watching, waiting, breathing through the paper itself. The moment your eyes meet his, something happens. Your chest tightens, your breathing slows, the world narrows, his eyes massive, hollow, bottomless. Lock onto yours. They don't look at you, They look into you, as if peeling back every layer, every lie, every secret you thought was buried. His mouth sealed, but silence is never quiet. The longer you stare, the louder it gets. A whisper, a pressure, not in your ears, but deep inside your mind. The details are unnatural. His claws, sharp, exaggerated, curling. Inward like hooks, almost as if trying to rip through the page itself. His tongue, forked, hangs from his gaping mouth, grotesque, serpent-like. His horns, curved, twisted, pushing against the very fabric of the illustration. No background, no environment, just void, black, empty. And somehow, it feels deeper than the page, as if the paper itself is just a veil, a thin barrier between us and him. And then there are the colors. Oh, the colors. Nothing else in the manuscript looks like this, where the holy pages glow with golds, reds, and deep blues. This page is wrong. Sickly greens, faded yellows, grays, so dark, they seem to bleed beyond the margins. It feels rotten, like the page itself is decaying, yet refusing to die. The pigment, still vibrant, still alive. Some say it's as if the image fights against time, against fading, against being forgotten. Scholars, priests, historians have spent centuries trying to explain it. Some call it symbolic, a medieval warning about sin and temptation, a representation of evil. But yet those who've stood before it, those who've felt it, speak differently. They talk about dizziness, nausea, a tightening in the chest, an overwhelming sense of being watched, judged, and for some, something worse, like being invited into something they cannot describe. A space that doesn't belong to this world. Opposite to this cursed page is the image of the heavenly city, a vision of paradise, pure, untouched. But ask anyone who's seen both, and they'll tell you the same thing. No one remembers. Heaven, no one talks about the city of light. The mind, the eyes, the soul are dragged every single time back to him. It's as if the page itself knows. It knows how to hold you, trap you, and whisper things without words. People often report the same phenomenon: cold hands, shallow breath, a weight in their chest, and then the sound, a faint whisper. Not words, not language, but something older, a vibration, a pulse, straight into the bones, into the blood. Once you've seen it, it doesn't leave. The image carves itself into the back of your mind. Long after you close your eyes, long after you leave, it waits in the dark corners of memory. There are hidden stories, stories rarely told out loud, whispers from curators, librarians, guards, stories of people staring too long, of visitors swearing. They saw it change, a twitch in the smile, a shift in the eyes, claws inching closer to the edge. Some say, the longer you stare, the thinner the veil becomes. This isn't just ink, this isn't just paint. This is a window, or worse, a door. No museum treats this page like any other. Special lights, restricted viewing, guards, always present, not just to protect the book, but maybe to protect us. Because the truth is, no one knows what happens if someone stares too long, if someone listens too carefully. Some visitors leave feeling strange, heavy, followed, and some never speak of what they saw ever again. And maybe that was always the point. Maybe this page wasn't drawn to be seen, but to be felt, to be remembered, or to remind us that what was summoned, what was bargained for, never truly left. And if the image itself holds such power, then what about the book? The Codex Gigas has a history soaked in mystery, in fire and disappearance, because this manuscript doesn't just exist, it survives. And sometimes It vanishes when it shouldn't. Mysteries of origin and disappearances. It's strange, isn't it? How something this cursed, this forbidden, refuses to be lost. The Codex Gigas shouldn't be here. It shouldn't have survived. And yet, it has. Through centuries of chaos, through wars, through fires, through the slow decay of time, like something or someone made sure it never disappeared for long. And when you start tracing its path, you realize this book doesn't just have a history, it has a will. The first mystery is its origin. Sure, the story tells of a monk, of a pact, of a knight that defied the laws of time, but no one really knows where it truly came from. The parchment, massive, hundreds of animal skins. The ink and still vibrant, the precision beyond human limits. Some say no hand, not even guided by desperation, that could create something this flawless. Others whisper, maybe it wasn't created at all. Maybe it was delivered. Then there are the fires. Oh, the fires. The monastery where it was kept burned, but not the codex. Everything turned to ash, except the book. Later, royal libraries caught fire, entire collection reduced to nothing. And yet, the Codex survived every single time, pulled from the flames, untouched, as if fire itself refused to claim it, or maybe something within it made sure the flames never dared, and the disappearances. This is where things get even stranger, because the Codex Gigas doesn't just survive disasters. Sometimes it simply vanishes. No theft, no witnesses, no explanation, gone. For years, for decades, and then it reappears. Somewhere else, in a palace, a fortress, a library halfway across the continent. No one knows how it moved. No one ever sees it being taken. It just shifts, as if it's walking through time by itself. One of the most baffling events happened during the 30 Years' War. The Swedish army stormed Prague, looting everything. Among the treasures they seized was the Codex. But when soldiers tried to carry it, some refused. Others collapsed, struck with sudden sickness. Some claimed to hear voices whispering from the pages. And yet, the book made the journey unscathed, unstoppable, as if it allowed itself to be taken, and that pattern never stopped. Every war, every political collapse, every transfer of power, the Codex Gigas survived, but not like a relic hidden away. For safety, no, it moved, sometimes appearing where it had no reason to be, sometimes arriving exactly when it shouldn't, always intact, always preserved, like it wanted to be seen, like it needed to be found. There are documents, quiet records buried deep in archives, mentions of the Codex showing up in places no one expected, letters between scholars who swear they saw it long before it was ever officially recovered, descriptions that match, dates that don't align. It's as if the book exists outside of chronology, outside of our reality, a visitor, a trespasser, a relic that doesn't just belong to the past, but to something else. Even today, those who work near it whisper strange things. Sometimes the cameras glitch, lights flicker, climate sensors fail, and sometimes, even when sealed, locked, protected, the faint sound of pages turning echoes from within the glass. Guards dismiss it as drafts, as faulty equipment. But when you ask them off the record, their faces pale, their voices drop, and they simply say, it's the book. And here's the real question. If the Codex Gigas can survive what should destroy it, if it can vanish without a trace, if it can move, when and where it pleases, then who really owns it? The libraries, the nations, or does it belong only to itself? Or worse, to something that still claims it? Because surviving is one thing, but What happens to those who keep it, those who dare to house it, protect it, display it? They all have one thing in common: a trail of tragedies, misfortunes, fires, collapses, deaths, coincidences. Maybe something else entirely, something we'll have to look closer to understand. Curses and tragedies. There's something deeply unsettling about patterns that repeat again and again until they stop being coincidences and start looking like curses. And the Codex Gigas? Oh, its pattern is written in fires, in ruins, in death. Wherever this book goes, destruction follows, slowly, relentlessly, like a shadow that never lets go. Take the monastery where it was born. Once, a thriving sanctuary of faith, a place of prayer, of silence, of peace. But after the Codex was created, something changed. Whispers began filling the corridors. Shadows, darker than any candle could fight, lingered longer. Monks fell ill. Some vanished. Others took vows of silence, not by choice, but by fear. And then the fire came, as if the earth itself wanted the place gone. But the Codex survived. Of course it did, moved to royal hands. But kings who owned it didn't fare much better. Empires that once seemed untouchable crumbled, wealth vanished, wars erupted, and always the book was there, silent, watching, as if the ink in its pages was never meant to record history, but to predict calamity. Then there's the Swedish Empire. When they took the Codex from Prague, they were at their peak. Power, wealth, influence. But after the book entered their hands, everything began to fall apart. Battles lost. Colonies crumbled, the economy shattered. Some blamed politics, others fate. But those who really knew, whispered a different word: curse. Even today, the pattern doesn't stop. Museums that house it report unexplained failures, lights that burn out months too soon, electronics fried for no reason, staff quitting suddenly, claiming to feel watched, heavy, oppressed. Some refuse to even enter the room where the Codex is kept. Others claim something follows them home. There are stories, quietly buried, of people who visited the Codex and never recovered. Anxiety, night terrors, sudden health problems, accidents. Some claim to hear voices, not whispers, not words, but something deeper, a pulse, a vibration, a presence, as if once the book notices you, it never stops. Researchers trying to digitize the manuscript reported strange malfunctions. Perfectly working scanners failed, hard drives corrupted, files lost without explanation. One technician simply refused to go back. When asked why, he said, the file wasn't corrupted, something didn't want to be copied, and he never touched the project again. Skeptics love to dismiss it. Of course they do. Coincidence, superstition, easy words for those who never stood in front of it, never felt the pressure in their lungs, never watched the shadows in the corners move just slightly, but enough to know that something is watching back. And then there are the deaths, archivists, historians, curators, who worked closely with the Codex, often meet strange ends, sudden illness, accidents, fires, and always the same phrase. In the reports, unexplained, but is it really unexplained? Or are we simply too afraid to admit the pattern is real? Because if the Codex is cursed, if it carries a shadow that no light can burn away, then the real question isn't why. The real question is, what's inside? that the world was never meant to see, and when you open its pages, beyond the scriptures, beyond the devil's portrait, you find something even darker, written in ink and blood. Forbidden and occult content. Most people think it's just a Bible, a manuscript, a relic of faith, but the Codex Gigas is not what it pretends to be, because once you move past the prayers and past the Psalms, beyond the scriptures, you begin to uncover something darker, something not meant for the hands of man. Hidden between the lines of salvation lies knowledge that belongs somewhere else. It starts subtle. Lists, strange lists, prayers that don't quite feel like prayers, symbols tucked between margins, and then it escalates. Full texts, dedicated not to God but to the forces opposed to him, rituals, spells, instructions for protection, for summoning, for banishment, and not the kind taught in churches. No, these are ancient, primal, dangerous. One section stands out among the rest. The exorcism manual, detailed, precise, page after page, describing not only how to expel demons, but how to recognize them, how to identify their whispers, their scents, their presence. It reads, not like spiritual guidance, but like a field manual for surviving encounters with the unseen, but then something even more disturbing. Formulas, not prayers. Formulas designed to protect or to harm. Instructions for creating talismans, symbols to ward off spirits, or, in some cases, to trap them, seal them, bind them indefinitely. This isn't scripture. This is sorcery. And the question lingers. Who was this written for? Hidden deeper, are pages dedicated to necromancy. Yes, necromancy. Methods to communicate with the dead, to extract knowledge from those beyond the veil, to control, to compel the spirits of the deceased. Names of herbs, diagrams of circles, incantations written not in Latin, but in a language older, forgotten, or deliberately erased. There are even passages that cross the boundary between the spiritual and the physical. Medical texts, but not medicine as we know it. Recipes for treatments involving mercury, lead, bloodletting, and even more unspeakable substances. Remedies that today would be called poison, or rituals disguised as cures. And it doesn't stop. Intertwined within the texts, there are coded writings, hidden phrases that scholars still can't fully decode. Some believe these codes are simply encryption. Others suspect they're bindings, words that aren't meant to be read aloud, words that if spoken might not just echo into the air but into something else. The presence of all this raises a terrifying question. How does one justify a book that holds both the Holy Bible and the darkest rites of necromancy within the same covers? What kind of mind, what kind of soul would bind heaven and hell together on the same page? Or was the monk simply the messenger and not the author? Even modern scholars, when confronted with these sections, grow quiet. Their tones shift, their explanation become vague. Some refuse to even translate certain parts, not because they can't, but because they won't. Because some knowledge isn't lost. It's hidden, buried, not by time, but by choice. And yet, for all this, the Codex Gigas remains open, displayed, viewed, as if the world collectively agreed to pretend it's just a book, as if ignoring the contents strips it of its power. But deep down, everyone feels it, that pressure, that silence, that undeniable presence that grows heavier the closer you get. And if the knowledge within is this dark, then what about the place where it was created? What still lingers there? The silence of the monastery, silence heavy, dense, the kind that presses against your skin and crawls down your spine. That was the sound of the monastery after the Codex Gigas was born. Once a place filled with prayer, song, and the steady rhythm of monastic life. It grew quiet, not peaceful silence, but unnatural, suffocating, the kind of silence that feels watched. The monks, they felt it first. Whispers with no source, footsteps echoing down empty stone, corridors, candles extinguishing without wind, shadows gathering in corners where no light could reach. At first, they dismissed it, lack of sleep, overwork, imagination. But the longer the Codex remained within those walls, the worse it got. Visitors began noticing it too. Merchants, pilgrims, scholars all reported the same thing, a pressure in the chest, a feeling like being stared at from behind. The walls seemed to breathe, the air heavier, colder, near the scriptorium, near the room where the Codex was written, the room no one entered after dark. Animals refused to cross certain thresholds. Birds never perched on the monastery roof again. Cats hissed at empty corners. Dogs howled, staring at nothing. And when the monks finally started to disappearing, the silence grew worse, as if the building itself was feeding on it, on them. Documents from the time are vague, carefully, deliberately vague. Reports of sudden illnesses, of monks falling into madness. Some tore their own eyes out, others walked into the forest and were never seen again, and those who remained took vows of silence, but not as devotion, no, as fear, as survival. There are hidden accounts passed down, whispered between generations, that at night the walls of the monastery whispered back, not words, but something worse, breathing, scraping, a sound like fingernails across stone, and every monk, every single one, began sleeping with their rosaries clutched tighter than ever. Even the abbot, the spiritual leader, began changing. His sermons grew darker, his prayers heavier. There are notes scribbled in the margins of old monastery records, suggesting the abbot himself refused to step into certain rooms, or maybe wasn't allowed. Some say the monastery wasn't haunted by spirits, but by something older, something that came with the book. Then the decline. The monastery, once prosperous, began to fall apart. Donations dried up, pilgrims stopped visiting, crops failed, and the monks, one by one, left, fled, abandoned the place to the silence, and the silence swallowed it whole, left only echoes, and something else. Centuries later, when explorers returned, they found the monastery intact but wrong, dust that never settled, rooms colder than the air outside, doors that refused to stay open, and, most chilling of all, the scriptorium. Still there, empty, but lined with claw marks, as if someone or something had tried to get out. And yet, the Codex Gigas was no longer there. It had moved on, left as it always does, but the silence remained. Some say it still does, that even now, if you walk those ruins and stand exactly where the Codex was written, you can feel it. The air shifts, the walls seem to breathe, and if you listen, really listen, you'll hear that the story isn't over. So now you know, but the real question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you pretend you never heard it? Close your eyes. Tell yourself it's just a story, a myth, A coincidence? Or will you finally start to question? Everything they told you was safe, harmless, innocent, because if a book like this exists, if a pact like this was real, then what else have they hidden from you? What else is lurking just beyond the veil of what we're allowed to know? Tell me, do you really believe that some books are just paper and ink? Do you really believe that darkness is only a metaphor? Or deep down, do you feel it too? That pull, that whisper, that cold realization that some truths are meant to be invisible. And if the Codex Gigas could survive centuries of war, fire, curses, and death, then maybe some things were never meant to be destroyed, only contained. But here's the scariest part. What if it's not the only one? So now I need to know. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt that strange sensation, like you were being watched? Do you believe in cursed objects, in forbidden knowledge, in pacts with things that don't belong to this world? Or do you believe it's all just coincidence? Either way, you've seen too much to go back now, so make sure to hit subscribe and turn on the notifications, because this is only the beginning. And trust me, there are secrets out there far darker than this.